Hello, welcome to Geneva Republic. Here we are in Lord of the Rings Online. Figured I'd take just a moment to talk about how awesome this game is. I downloaded it because I was talking to somebody in New World and they said you ought to give that game a try. They were a player of both. So I downloaded it, I gave it a try, and I was pleasantly surprised because I came to realize that this world is special, being as it come from J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. It's special in a way that normal video game universes aren't, because this is the world that we read about in that great literature. And so when you play the game, you get the chance to see that world from a first-person perspective. That's special. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is just how big this game's open world truly is. So, let me get away from all their mobs so I don't get killed. But I am going to pull up the Lord of the Rings map that somebody had made for us. Amazing person put together this fan-made map of the Lord of the Rings game world by putting it all together. And it is so huge because you start off over in the Shire, and the Shire is roundabout right there. And then you move on over as you quest to the nearest town, which would be Bree over here. And so far, the entirety of what I've done in this game is pretty much just this area right here. And there's a lot of areas I haven't really fully gotten into, but that area right there is where I've been, up to level 26. But the actual game world is enormous. It's all of this. Goes up, down. It's not just a square. It's an enormous map of many maps, all tied together seamlessly in a non-instanced way. So you can go from one end all the way to the other. You don't have to go through any loading screens or anything like that to go from one part of the map to the other. Now, I can't go to other places. Like, for example, I thought I might make my way over to Rohan because that would be cool. And I realized, well, as a low-level player, I'm not able to make it down there because the mobs will get me and I'll die. So I have to wait to go there until I'm strong enough to make it there safely. But if I was a fully leveled player, I could make my way wherever I wanted without going through any loading screens. And that's amazing. It does seem like the development team that makes this game has put a great deal of effort into ensuring that the material is faithful to Mr. Tolkien's work. As I have gone through the audiobooks, listening to The Lord of the Rings, and sort of following along virtually in the game, looking at the places that are written about in the books, I was actually surprised to discover that in the game, the things that are in the books are faithfully represented. And in some cases, they are more faithfully represented in this game than in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. Not to say that the trilogy doesn't do a good job of taking that enormous story and putting it on the big screen. I think it's absolutely amazing. But, for example, in the book, as Frodo begins to make his way out of the Shire toward Bree, they go through the forest and they meet Mr. Bombadil, who is a strange character that lives in a house in the forest. That's not really included in the Lord of the Rings movie at all. It's just not part of that movie. But it is part of the game. So I really think if I wasn't playing this game, I probably wouldn't have quite had the same sense of understanding of where things are when I started working through the book. And that's really amazing to have a game that actually is faithful to the book, to where you would get more out of the book if you were playing the game as well. That's really kind of why I'm playing it, because there's other MMOs that do a lot of things better. If I was going to say, for example, look at this combat system. It's not bad. And I'm going to tell you, the combat in Lord of the Rings Online is functional. Being completely honest, I think I enjoy the combat in Lord of the Rings Online more than I enjoy the combat in Final Fantasy XIV. I'm also going to say that the combat in Guild Wars 2 or something like Genshin Impact, though, is really incredible compared to this. New World is amazing. There's not going to be any awards given to Lord of the Rings Online for its combat. And yet the combat's not bad. It's functional. It doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel unrewarding to play. And I'm not really playing it for the really amazing combat system. I'm playing it for the amazing lore, the wonderful, huge open world that I can explore. I'm playing it for the player housing, which is cute and cozy. I can have my little house in the Shire, or maybe in Rohan if I get there. I can go into the Prancing Pony or a little pub in the Shire and sit there and enjoy the ambience. In many ways, The Lord of the Rings Online is more of an old school MMO. But it's not ancient. It's not antiquated to the point that it's not enjoyable to play anymore. I installed RuneScape as an example, and I think RuneScape is a great game. But the truth of the matter is, I really struggled to get into it because the graphics are so dated. It just doesn't feel fun to me. I'm sure it would have been extremely fun to me years ago if I got into it. But to start off now in RuneScape just doesn't feel rewarding to me, because there's other games that do what it's setting out to do better. And the dated graphics feel inconvenient. I don't get that feeling in this game. I was actually surprised to see how much foliage there was on the ground. Overall, how high quality the graphics really are. I'm assuming that there's been a lot of updates over the years as the devs have tried to keep the game current. Certainly does show its age. But it doesn't show its age without grace. I wouldn't recommend this game if you didn't like Lord of the Rings. If you felt like Lord of the Rings was not something you're interested in, and you just really wanted to have a good MMO, well, I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it because without a love for the world and an admiration for the story behind the world, there's probably better worlds that you could find in a video game. Maybe not as large, because I have to say the open world map is enormous in this game. And I don't think I've encountered any other games that have a map that looks like it's as large. There are big maps out there. Possibly not anything as large, though, as LOTRO. The community is real nice. Seems like a lot of people play this game that like Tolkien. People that have an admiration for the Lord of the Rings. There's also a certain moral virtue to the story of the Lord of the Rings. It's not just a story purely told for entertainment. It's also a story that could be seen as relevant more as a form of literature. So as a result of that, there seem to be more players in Lord of the Rings that are mature, respectable players. A lot of people who've been around for a long time. Surprisingly, though, there's also a lot of new players. The game world isn't buzzing with activity like some of the more popular games that have mega servers. Guild Wars 2 has a mega server. Albion Online has a mega server. Final Fantasy XIV is just extremely popular now compared to where it has been over the years. But it's not a totally deserted game either. I will say that the play style on Lord of the Rings Online is a lot more personal, a lot more solo. It's a great game if you want to spend some time just chilling by yourself, maybe do some personal crafting or gathering or do a quest or just enjoy the open world. Look at the scenery. You can have a good time. And for me, a big part of what makes me want to play MMOs is just being part of the world. I don't like it when I feel like I have to do quests and I don't really get a chance to just enjoy exploring. To me, exploring is the first and highest thing that I enjoy doing. I just like being part of the world. So from that perspective, Lord of the Rings Online is right up my alley. Another nice thing about it is that it's a low fantasy game. And for example, you can ride a horse. Unlike a, higher fantasy game where maybe it's a griffin or it's a flying dragon or something else like that. Lord of the Rings Online, as Lord of the Rings itself is, it's not focused so much on high fantasy or high magic. It's more of a low fantasy. So it has a more familiar, refreshing feel about it in some ways. Here in the tavern, we have some NPCs. The music is wonderful in this game as well, as is all the music of Lord of the Rings. Even if the only reason you play this game is just for the ambience, the Shire, and being able to role play standing or sitting next to a roaring fire. If you like Tolkien and you like big open worlds, it's worth giving this game a try. I'm going to go ahead and leave us here in the Forsaken Inn, sitting by the fire. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this, please do like and subscribe. Till next time, Shaliva out.